helper today. With us today, we have Maddy Reynolds, Jackie Johnson, and Marissa Bingham. And for those of you who do need an ASL interpreter, we do have Clayton available for you today, as well as CART, which is being provided by One Interpreting. So I'm going to go ahead and let Jackie, Marissa, and Maddy introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about what they'll be presenting on today. Go ahead, ladies.
Hello, Texas Hands and Voices. It's so nice to speak to you all. My name is Jackie Johnson. We also have Maddy Reynolds and Marissa Bingham. We are all occupational therapy doctoral students at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. And we're going to be talking about helping the helper. And helping the helper is all about caregiver mental health, how to handle stress, how to recognize stress, and how to deal with stress in a healthy way. Okay, so what are we talking about today? So the first thing we're going to touch on, because we're occupational therapy students, we see this problem of caregiver mental health and how to promote caregiver mental health through an occupational therapy lens. So we're going to be talking about what is occupational therapy, how does occupational therapy relate to children that are deaf or hard of hearing and their caregivers, and also throughout this presentation, we're going to be abbreviating hard of hearing as HOH. We're also going to be talking about stress levels and how to recognize when you're feeling stressed. So your stress levels will stay at a healthy level before escalating so they don't affect your health. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to decrease stress and develop healthy coping strategies. So first of all, what is occupational therapy? I want you to think about a time that you have worked with or been with an occupational therapist, whether that was with you yourself, with a loved one, maybe with your child, and then I'm going to get into what occupational therapy is. So occupational therapists help people engage in the activities they need and want to do. And this is a really broad definition because occupational therapist is a really broad scope of practice. We help individuals across the lifespan from birth to death with many varying abilities. And as occupational therapists, we look at more than just the physical abilities of a person. We also look at who that person is, what their cognition, their beliefs, what makes them who they are, and what makes them different from other people. We also look at their environment, which can have enabling or disabling factors. For example, if you are hard of hearing and you're primarily presented with auditory stimuli, that might make that environment may be disabling for you, and you might be able to, you might want to have a visual stimuli additionally. We also look at how these multiple factors affect your behavior and how you interact with the environment. So for occupational therapists, we work with individuals who are hard of hearing or deaf. We can recommend adaptive equipment. And so there's many different types of adaptive equipment. We're only going to talk about a couple. So there's alerting devices, which can translate auditory stimuli, hearing stimuli into like visual or perhaps touch or tactile stimulation. We also have assistive listening devices or applications that you can put on your phone or computer. We also can help enhance sensory processing. Some people who are hard of hearing or deaf may have problems with other sensory processing other sensory stimulations, such as visual or touch sensations. And so we help integrate all the senses so you understand the environment correctly. And lastly, we can also help to provide anxiety and stress relief techniques, which is what we're going to focus on today. Like I said, occupational therapists look at all these factors that affect your behavior and actions, which includes mental health. And that is what we're focusing on today. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Maddy.
Hello, everyone. So I'm first off going to go ahead and get started about stress levels and responsibility, because as we know, every human deals with stress at some point. We all go through tough situations. We're all faced with experiences that sometimes we're not prepared for, or we don't know the most appropriate way to react. So regardless of where you are in life, what your experience is, what your background comes from, everyone should know how to identify stress and ways to cope with those stress. Okay, and so for this population specifically, we wanted to kind of correlate what might be causing stress in this specific situation, experiencing children who have a hard of hearing diagnosis or have a deaf diagnosis. So as you can see, it is an estimated 1 to 3 per 1,000 children have a hearing loss. So there's many people that we are going to interact with, especially just with this organization. You guys have clearly created kind of a support group for you guys to gain resources, talk to each other, gain that insight and things like that. So as you know, stress is associated with caring for a child that is deaf or hard of hearing, and it fluctuates with time. So everyone is different. Everyone's situation is unique. I'm sure in this population specifically, we have some people who were diagnosed at an early age, some people maybe later on in life, coming from different cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds and things like that, all has a very unique aspect on this context and how it will affect you. So one thing I wanted to touch on is specifically that this diagnosis, it's important to always remember that it not only affects the person who has the diagnosis, but also their family or caregiver, right? Because it's not just one person dealing with this diagnosis and now having to adapt. It's going to spread out beyond that: family, peers, friends, and things like that. So during our research for this presentation, something interesting that we found was that a lot of caregivers indicated that taking care of their own mental health made them possibly feel more stressed. Taking the time to sit and really think with yourself about what is causing my self-stress and focusing within actually has a tendency to cause more stress or possibly feelings of burden or guilt. And we wanted to touch on that because it's important for us to know that while, of course, a lot of the focus of adaptations and responding to new situations is going to be focused on the person with the diagnosis, but how we interpret situations and how we react in our responses, that's going to directly affect your child or your loved one. So it's really important to be proactive in how we respond to those things, identifying the signs and symptoms, and knowing who you can turn to. If you don't know those things, then who can I go to help me figure out this information? So later on in the presentation, we're going to get into a little bit of how we balance these feelings, how we make sure we care for ourselves in the way that we would want our loved ones cared for. Okay. The next important thing we wanted to touch on was support systems. Early intervention support system is very crucial to lowering caregiver and parental feelings of stress, right? Everyone that you speak to or interact with wants to have someone in their corner. They want to have someone they can turn to, someone they can ask questions, gain insight, tips, and things like that, because we never know what kind of new information or tips someone may be able to share with us. I read an article about a parent who had a child who was given their child was given a deaf diagnosis when they were, I think it was 6 months old. And then they spoke to someone who had just recently been given a hard of hearing diagnosis. And the person who had just been given the diagnosis, who had only been adapting to this new way of living for a year or two, actually gave insight to this person who had been adapting to this lifestyle for years at a time. So we never know what kind of new perspective can be brought in, or maybe just looking at something from a different lens and hearing someone else's perspective. So talking to people, and of course, Texas Hands and Voices is a great resource to use. You're going to be surrounded by people who get what you're going through, who can relate to your situations, and who can kind of rally around you to make sure that you are getting the help and the resources that you need. Jackie, could you advance to the next slide for me? Okay, so common signs and symptoms of stress. So like we said earlier, everyone has dealt with stress in one way or another throughout life. There are some that we know right away that we can identify, such as increased heart rate, or maybe you start getting hives or a rash on your skin, shaking, things like that. But there are other kind of silent symptoms that we wanted to touch on to make sure that we are making note of later on. So if you look at our little graphic over here to the right, I'm going to read out some of the ones that really stood out to us. So insomnia, nightmares, or disturbing dreams is a sign of stress. That is a sign of your body telling you that in some way, on some level, you are feeling uncomfortable. You are feeling like maybe you need to make a change, we need to adapt, or figure out another way to handle something. Weight gain and loss without diet. This is a big one because not only, of course, is mental health affecting your mental faculties, but it's your physical faculties too, right? So if you aren't taking the time to focus on your diet, if you're not, cutting calories or increasing calories consciously, but you see yourself fluctuating in a way that you're not really understanding, that's not to say that it's something super serious, but it is something to take note of and to know, okay, this in conjunction with maybe hearing ringing, buzzing sounds or popping sounds, or chest pain or heartburn, kind of understanding that a bunch of these symptoms in conjunction could maybe be your body telling you, we need to take a second, we need to slow down, or maybe we need help. Okay, so some statistics related to hard of hearing diagnosis or a deaf diagnosis that we wanted to touch on. Parents, or here, let's start with this one. Caregiver stress levels were higher in the months following the diagnosis. So the months directly following the diagnosis and around the time the child started school. So the research that we did indicated that the initial adaptation to this new lifestyle, of course, changing the way you live, changing your typical patterns and routines, is most likely a very high stress level context. And also when your child is starting school. So this could be related to, is my child getting the appropriate educational needs that I want for them? Are they making the social relationships that I want them to have? Are they creating friends? Are they building their confidence level and their self-esteem when they're not with their family and their mom, dad, caregiver? Are they able to interact in a social scenario and be engaged and be participative? So secondly, after a child's diagnosis, caregivers reported higher levels of stress in the areas of healthcare and emotional well-being. So particularly this emotional well-being part is something that's what we really wanted to hone in on in this presentation, that a lot of the times health is directly physically based. Maybe I'm having a cold, I need to see a doctor, or I broke my arm, I need to see a doctor. But we need to change that narrative and know that your emotional well-being and your mental well-being is just as important as your physical well-being. So again, identifying these signs of symptoms and then learning how to deal with them is a very important aspect of being who you need to be for yourself and who you need to be for your loved one that you're caregiving for. Okay, Marissa, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you now.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about ways that we can help to decrease that stress that we're feeling. So these first two bullet points on here, the empowerment orientation and the resource orientation, these are more about changing our narrative. So it's about shifting our mindset. So this empowerment orientation, this is giving yourself the control or the power to discover your own capabilities and kind of have that you can mindset. And the resource orientation, this is shifting from that deficit only perspective. So that perspective that you're telling yourself, no, I can't do this, like I don't have the abilities to do so, and starting to kind of focus more on our inner strengths that we can utilize to help overcome certain challenges. So this is really focusing on the options and the possibilities that we can have to adapt to certain situations. So with these two perspectives, again, you have to shift your mindset, which I know can definitely be difficult, especially when you're facing a challenge or when there's things going on that you're not really stopping to think about this. But it's that same thing kind of with a lot of other things, like you just have to practice at it and to learn more about yourself and learn what your strengths are and know the resources that you have that can help you face things in a more positive, confident manner. And now I'm going to go into some strategies that we can utilize to kind of help us build up this certain mindset. So as I'm going through each of these 6, I kind of want y'all to stop and think about how these can apply to certain situations in your life or how you could utilize them to help you. And we can go to the next slide. All right, so the first one that I want to talk about is physical activity. So of course we know that there's a lot of research that has proven that physical activity is very good for our physical health, our well-being. And of course there are so many strategies out there that fall under physical activity, but the one that I kind of want to focus on is yoga. So research has shown that yoga lowers our body's cortisol levels, which our cortisol levels are our stress response. It can help decrease depressive symptoms, improve your sleep quality, and overall just improve your quality of life. So during my research, I found that one survey on Psychology Today revealed that over 85% of people who participated in yoga reported that it helped them to alleviate their stress. So this is a really good way to kind of incorporate a new activity if this is something you're interested in. And if you don't have time to go to a gym to like participate in a yoga class, like that is okay. There are YouTube videos out there that you can just quickly pull up to see if you're even interested in something like this, and then kind of just build your way with that. A lot of other physical activity things that you could do, of course, is the typical like running, going on hikes, just getting that fresh air, swimming, sports. So just anything like that that you can engage in. But one thing to keep in mind that with physical activity, you have to maintain it to get the effects. So this kind of isn't just like a one and done kind of deal. You have to kind of build up your body's endurance to doing the exercises to kind of reap those benefits and to kind of get that like positive stress relief alleviation. And then now we can go to the next slide. All right, so these are more specific techniques. So we're going to talk about a body scan technique and a breathing technique. So the body scan technique, this is more of a meditation strategy. So I'm going to kind of go through what you do for this. So the first thing that you want to do is lay down if possible. If not, you can sit in a chair. But I want you to close your eyes and take deep, slow breaths and try to focus your breathing from your belly and kind of just focus on that. And then what you're going to want to do is you can either start from your head or your feet. Basically, with this body scan technique, you're going to be going down or up, depending on where you want to start. So first, I'm just going to talk about starting from your feet. So you're kind of just honing in on just that one aspect of your body. So you start to ask yourself in your mind, what are you feeling in this certain part of your body? Do you have pain in this part? Can you feel tension here? And it's all about bringing that awareness. And if you do feel tension or pain in a certain part of your body, really focus in on that and try to discover, why am I feeling that pain? And then you really want to start doing the breathing in and out, and think of it as you're breathing out that you're releasing that tension, and just kind of keep working that out until you're starting to feel your body relax. And then with the breathing technique, so I'm going to talk about one that we actually learned in our program. So I don't know if everyone can see me, but you would take your hand, trying to get into that. Sorry. Okay. And you're going to get your index finger, and you're going to start from just down on this side. And as you work your way up your finger, you're going to breathe in. And as you start going down, you'll breathe out. And then you'll do that with each finger until you start to feel yourself relax. And you can do this as many times as you need to. This is also a simple thing that you can do if you're out in public and you're starting to feel yourself becoming overwhelmed. You can easily just put your hand in your lap and start working your way up and down your fingers. And next we'll talk about some mindfulness, religious practices, and scheduling. So of course, just like with physical exercise, there's a lot of different mindfulness techniques out there, but I'm going to focus on one specific technique that I thought was really interesting, and it's called the stop technique. So with mindfulness, it's really about making sure that you are present in the moment. So with the S for the stop technique, if you feel yourself starting to get really overwhelmed or anxious, stop what you're doing, press pause on what you're doing. And then the T is to take a breath, take a deep breath and kind of bring yourself back to the present moment. Don't start thinking about all the million things that you have to do, but just really focus in on what you are doing. The O is the observe. So this is more bringing awareness to how you're feeling. So what are you feeling and why are you feeling this way? So this is where we really start to address kind of those negative feelings that we're having. And what you want to do is you want to change your inner dialogue of that. So change the story, put a spin on it to make it something more positive. And then once you have that, you can proceed to doing what it was you were doing, but utilizing that new adaptation or that new positive emotion and kind of incorporate that into what you're doing. And then of course we have religious practices. So if this is something that you're interested or something that you want to get more into, it is a good way to engage. And there's a lot of research done too that does state that religious practices does help. So if this is something that you want to get more involved in, then I would encourage you to do so. And then this last one is scheduling. So this is personally one of my favorites and one that I do a lot throughout school. So this can easily be done through a planner, a calendar, or even your phone. Because I know for me, and I'm sure a lot of y'all feel the same way too, there's a million things going on in our head. So we'll start to think, oh, I need to do this today. Or then something else will pop up and it's like, oh, wait, but I need to do this too. So everything just kind of becomes very overwhelming and it just seems way scary. So a good thing that I like to do is just write down what I do need to get done. And this is a way for me to also visually kind of prioritize what can be done. So you can see, oh, I wrote this down. So this are the things that I actually need to get done today. But this I can put off for another time. And it's just a way to organize all that stuff that you need to get done in your head and to write it down. Me too, Maddie. I would be lost without my planner. It's very helpful. It's a good technique that definitely helps just to really visualize everything. All right, so these are just some interesting information about de-stressing opportunities. So research has showed that 3 10-minute walks can equal 1 30-minute walk. So of course, I know a lot of us are pressed for time. So if you can't go do that 1 30-minute walk, maybe we could just break it up into short walks, or even if you can only do 5 minutes, just start trying to incorporate different techniques. And then the second one, I actually really found interesting. So it says artistic stress strategies are shown to have a more significant effect on stress reduction than other typical stress reducing activities. So as occupational therapy students too, we learn a lot about how crafts and artistic things are a really good way for people to engage in because it gives them that instant gratification. And artistic ways are a way that we can really kind of express our emotions and how we're feeling. And it really helps us to become more aware of what we're feeling. And then it'll be easier for us to kind of acknowledge that and start to work through it. So artistic strategies are a really good way to start incorporating some of these things. And then the last thing is a quote that I found that I thought was a really beautiful quote. So it says, the quality of your leisure time isn't measured by the longevity of your activity, but by the meaning you give to it. So we have something in occupational therapy called occupational balance. So this is where everything that we need to get done in our day, you have to like juggle everything to make sure that you make time for every kind of occupation that you have to do, whether that be cleaning, cooking, laundry, taking care of others, your job, things like that. But what sometimes people don't realize too is that leisure is an occupation that we have. And this one tends to kind of get put on the back end of things just because it's like we don't have time for it. And there are so many different things that we have to do. But I want to encourage y'all to make time for yourself, and that it is okay to make time for yourself. You don't need to have those feelings of guilt because it's a thing that we all need. We all need time to do something that we actively enjoy doing and that we find leisure in. And research can say that you should do something for an X amount of time to get the benefits of it, but you know your mind and your body the best, so you know what will work for you. If you only need 5 minutes to take to yourself to do something you enjoy, then that's okay, take it. If you have 30 minutes, that's great too. It's the same, as long as you're feeling those benefits from it. And I just want everyone to know that you matter and what you want and love to do matters. So give yourself that time. Thank you. So this is just a survey that we have. So people who are in this presentation, if you could please fill it out, or even if you're going to be watching it later, if you can please fill it out for us to let us know what we did well and what we can improve on, that would be much appreciated.
All right, well, this is Teresa. Thank you. Give me 1 second, because I think we lost Clayton, and I'm not sure if you guys can see me, but I am also MIA on this screen. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I know you weren't quite done, but let me see if we can get Clayton back on. Are y'all able to see me at all? You are. Oh, I
Yeah,
cannot.
we can see you. We actually, Marissa just wrapped it up. So we actually
Okay.
finished.
Okay,
Yeah.
I saw that last screen, so my apologies.
I know you're good.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, this was really, really great presentation. I really wanted to touch on a couple of things, but I'm sad that we've lost Clayton, but we do have our cart available still. And so I know that folks watching can at least read the captions, after today's presentation. And I see that you have dropped a survey in our chat box, and we'll be sure to share that. Oh, I think Clayton is back. Yay, we're excited to have him back. Let me spotlight him again. Oh, thank you, Sarah. So truly, I was impressed with the presentation. It was beautiful. And I really like some of the things that you mentioned, especially the tips, taking that 5-minute walk or 10-minute walk outside. I know working from home and as a parent, sometimes I get stuck inside all day long. And for my own mental health and for my family's safety, I will take breaks outside and I will go walk, outside in the front yard, or just take 5 minutes outside barefoot in the yard just to kind of enjoy, nature for a few minutes. And it really does a lot for me. And so when you mentioned those 10-minute walks equal 30, I thought that really makes sense. That's a really great way to have people just kind of take a moment to themselves and just kind of relax and de-stress. And Sarah, did we have any other questions or comments? Let's see that I didn't catch.
I do
Teresa,
not
I just
see
wanted to
any
say,
in the chat. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Teresa, I just wanted to say I really appreciated that comment that you just made, because I think a big point that Marissa touched on was that a lot of us feel like taking leisure time is selfish, or that it's I'm only focused on me. Why would I focus on me when this person is going through this, and my child is or my loved one is, having difficulties in these ways. And it's so important for us to know that by us taking that leisure time and us taking care of ourselves, you actually are benefiting your loved one in the long run, because as the caregiver, it's your duty and your responsibility to give your all and give your best self to them. And if you're not your best self, then that's the product that they're getting out of that.
Yeah. And, this is really generational too. I know our focus today, of course, is our families, our kids here who are deaf and hard of hearing, but I've served as a caregiver for my grandmother. And, many of us as we get older are going to be serving as caregivers for our parents and possibly other siblings or family members. And so all of these tips actually are quite, generational, right? We can use this at whatever stage of caregiving you happen to be in, whether it's your own child or a family member, a parent, a spouse. And so I really took away so many little tips and tricks that you guys have shared here that, I mean, are really going to make an impact, I know, on my life. Because some of the things I'm already doing, but the other things I'm like, oh, I could do that. You know, I could do that, and that would help me de-stress a little bit here. So I'm so thankful that you guys came on today to share this information with us. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our families before we close up shop today?
I think there was a question in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, any other 5 to 10 minute ideas we can incorporate?
So instantly what comes to mind to me is, I know we kind of touched on yoga, but I feel like this is different. Stretching, like even just because I'm, you know, as my group members mentioned, we're in a doctoral program, we're in a class lecture for 4 hours at a time, 2 hours at a time kind of thing. So even just taking a couple minutes to stand up and just touch your toes. Reach down, touch your toes, put your hands up to the sky and just get some movement. Every time I do it, I'm like, wow, I just released so much tension. And it was, you know, a 30-second activity that I had to do, you know, stretch your neck, stretching your arms and things like that. It doesn't have to be necessarily like a planned yoga pose, as we mentioned before. It can be something as simple as I'm leaning back in my chair and getting that lower back stretch or something along those lines.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming on today. Again, this is Teresa Banda, and we thank you so much for joining our webinar. We will be sharing that survey probably via email with any of the attendees that attended today. And the webinar will be posted to our YouTube channel probably by the end of the week, if not early next week. So and I'll make sure that maybe we can include the survey too on our YouTube channel, so that if anybody that watches the webinar post-webinar can at least share some of that with you. Or again, I know you have, I think on one of your slides, you might have shared your contact information, but if not, I mean, do you want folks to reach out to you with questions, or is that sure?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then we'll be sure to share your contact information as well. And you can keep an eye out for the webinar on our social media channels, as far as like, you know, Facebook and Instagram. We'll be sharing information about that too. And just once again, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this great information with our families. It's truly appreciated. And I know that I took away lots of, you know, great tips that I'm going to use daily, and I'm sure our families will too. So thank you so much again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Clayton and Edward, our interpreter and part provider with One Interpreting. Thank you for coming on today and saving the day, Clayton. and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you for the opportunity. Goodbye.
Bye.